Hi, everyone. 2.5 years ago, Remy Berthaud and I had the idea to create a conference dedicated to open source businesses. We're now preparing for the third edition of Open Source Founders Summit and started this video series to showcase the kinds of conversations between leadership and open source companies that happen at the event. If you would like to be part of the conversation, you should join us May 18th and 19th in Paris. Welcome to the Open Source Founders Summit video podcast series. I'm Emily, your host. Today I'm chatting with Guillaume from Makun. Guillaume, thank you for joining me.
Hello, Emily. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to participate.
Can you introduce Makun just briefly for people who haven't heard of it?
Yeah, sure. So Mokun is an 8 years old open source project, probably a bit niche. It's a developer tool, primarily a desktop application, and the main usage is API mocking, or so API simulations, sandboxing. So there are different techniques. They are all basically the same thing. We are imitating an API, any kind of mostly REST APIs for when they are not available or when you are integrating with an API and you maybe only have the documentation and you don't have access to a sandbox, for example. So the users are really broad, from single developers, prototyping or integrating with, let's say, Stripe, to companies creating sandboxes that are always up and running and against which they are running their integration test, automated test, etc.
So you mentioned something really interesting um, on the registration page for Open Source Founders Summit, where we ask people to talk about the things that they're struggling with.
I don't
And
remember.
well, that's good because
Tell
I
me.
I, I pulled it up. So one of the things that you mentioned is that you're struggling with the messaging around building a cloud offering for something when one of your core value propositions is that it's local first.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's yeah.
this is, you're not the only open source company that's
Mhm.
going to have that struggle. So I was hoping you could go a little bit more in detail into that. What's your thought process and how have you been managing this sort of
Yeah.
this dynamic?
So I think everything happened a bit by accident, because I created this app 8 years ago, and it was really because I wanted a side project. So that was the first thing, and then the second one, I needed this kind of tool, so I created it. And then a lot of people started using it after I posted on Reddit, Hacker News, and the more you work on an open source project, the more work it is, because there is all the support requests, and you just don't want to stop doing things like fixing vulnerabilities, answering people needing help. Otherwise, it's a dead project. So you feel this pressure of maintaining this project to keep it alive. It's also a bit like your baby somehow. So um, but that takes time, a lot of time. And even if open source is basically about publishing code, this work should or needs to be rewarded somehow. Otherwise, you don't have this time anymore, and you need to find a job, or you cannot reduce your full-time job to work on the project, especially when it's taking more and more time. So um, yes, it's a desktop application, let's say privacy first, local first, etc. But at one point, the monetization came out. Or, I mean, the question was clear for me. If I wanted to spend more time on this project, I had to find a sustainable way to work on it. And donations worked up to a point, but it was definitely not enough to even to cover half a salary or something like that. So it's growing slowly, but it's not enough. So I did a survey years ago, and I said, "Will you be interested in real-time collaboration, deploying in the cloud, etc.?" And hundreds of people answered, the traditional "shut up and take my money." So I was really pumped up, and I worked on the cloud for 1.5 years, 2 years, and I released features one after the other, and nobody paid, basically. And I discovered that the cloud users, so the cloud is available in the desktop app and as a web application also. And I discovered that all the huge companies using Mokun, like Vodafone, etc., so the open source offline version, weren't really interested in the cloud because they were self-hosting. And the people interested in the cloud weren't interested at all in self-hosting or installing a desktop application. So now I have, let's say, a market with two types of users slash customers. And it's really hard now to position the tool, which has also 8 years of history, as something versatile, because when I look at Penpot and very successful open source stories like that, you see always or nearly always the same pattern. It's either self-host or the hosted version. And uh, now Mokun is some kind of hybrid desktop app from which you can access cloud options and also a cloud version and also a self-hosted CLI Docker image that you can also connect to the cloud. So it's really hard to position the tool. And I feel like I will have to maybe change a bit how the tool works to clarify this, I think. And this was a very long explanation, so sorry.
So what you have is what I sort of call this classic problem of open source companies, where so there's a couple ways for you the markets of an open source project and an open and the commercial offering to interact. Sometimes you can have the relationship look like a target. So if you think of each audience as a circle, there's complete overlap. The market for your commercial offering is it's completely overlapping to the market for your open source project. Sometimes it looks like a Venn diagram where there's some overlap, but it's not 100%. There are some people who wouldn't be interested in your open source project but are interested in your commercial offering, and vice versa. And then you have your case, in which case there are two circles and they don't touch each other. And in this situation where you have a market for your project and your product that look like two circles, the challenge is, how do you use your project then as a growth engine?
Yeah,
How are you solving that dilemma?
yeah.
Or how are you trying to solve
Um,
that dilemma?
yeah, that's a very good question. So yeah, I mean, the Venn diagram is a good image. There is still some permeability between the two circles. Um, I think it takes time. I still see some teams using the tool for a while, offline or with, let's say, all the desktop application distributed and collaborating with Git, which has some limits because it's heavily JSON based. So there are also some pain points, and I see that the cloud is solving these pain points. Now the question is how, let's put it bluntly, but how to create more pain points. But this is something I really don't want to do because I mean, from the beginning, I really believe that the app should have all the functionalities, all the features, and that nothing should be paywalled. Um, so that will be my first reflex, to maybe create, not create more pain points, but, try to at least solve more pain points and maybe paywalled these features. But I have a really hard time to do that. And yeah, and it's really a challenge. It's really not easy to convert companies using the tool to a cloud. It's also a very different setup. So I think maybe erasing the difference between a local setup and a cloud setup would help. Maybe switching to something that is more unified, like the cloud is just the hosted version, and if you host locally, you nearly have the same behavior, like a web app instead of a desktop app or something like that. So maybe something more uniform will help. It will be more readable. I don't know.
You bring up an interesting question, though, an interesting dilemma in the business, open source business community, which is how much do you want to put into your open source project, or how much can you without sabotaging your ability to make it financially sustainable?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. One, I mean, piece of history. When I quit my job 4 years ago to work full time on Mokun, and now I'm still freelancing, but it was mostly full time. I added a lot of features to the open source project, and so I didn't try to find a sustainable model or monetize or anything like that for years. That was probably my first mistake, to try to just grow the audience or the user base and really wait a long time before monetizing. Um, yeah, but yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question? No, I'm telling stories and I forgot the main question.
That's okay.
I,
The question was just a more of a comment that this is a challenge for a lot of open source companies.
yeah.
How easy do you want to make it to use your project, and how do you do
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yes,
Where's the balance?
exactly. Yeah, yes. Sorry, I always forgot the question. Um, yeah, and it's a very good question. I did another story, but it will probably partially answer. I did some issue triage and try to interact with all the issues on GitHub. So I don't leave everything dormant for too long. And there is one issue that is very old, and people are asking that the data file where everything is saved is split in multiple files to make Git collaboration easier. And it's a very, very old issue. And one, I'm not sure it's the best path, but that could be debated. It's an open source project, everything is public, etc. And secondly, it will directly compete with part of the cloud offering because the cloud offering is solving one pain point, which is real-time collaboration. So I was
Mhm.
transparent on the issue, and I was also feeling a bit bad about it because I would really like to be able to add this kind of feature, but I still think that it would uh, probably convince people to not pay for the cloud, and then the long-term sustainability will be a goal even harder to achieve. But I still felt bad about it, so it's the issue is still open. But
Mhm.
I think, like I said before, maybe by switching a bit where the application is headed, maybe there is a way to merge everything in something that is more traditional open source approach with self-hosting versus cloud, instead of having this kind of hybrid applications all over the place, maybe.
And do you feel what makes you not want to try open core? Do you have is it a philosophical reason, or do you just think that it won't work?
Um, yeah, you mean by open core? So having features that are paywalled, let's say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Um, I have some philosophical debate, but yeah, it will make sense. I wouldn't do it, of course, if it was some new features, a community effort, for example. But if it was something coming from me or the two or three people who helped me, um, yeah, why not? It's something I discussed with a lot of people, and they all told me the same thing. You need some unique features that are part of this paid offering, and it makes sense. Even like this Git collaboration, why not put that behind payment. And I know a lot of companies using the free open source version for sometimes dozens and dozens of people, and maybe it will help them be a bit more convinced that paying for the features would be a good thing, and then it will be a good positive circle of monetization. I don't know, but yeah, you are right. It's something that I should try maybe.
So you're coming to Open Source Founders Summit in 2.5 weeks. And my next question for you is just what are you looking forward to talking about with uh, other founders of open source companies?
Um, no, it's clearer for me. Before I was a bit skeptical. It's still a small, let's say, small company, so it's definitely not Penpot or Passbolt, who are also in Luxembourg. So I know them a bit, and they're really successful. I thought that I would want to talk about pricing and things like that. After all, I think it doesn't matter because I think the product is maybe not mature enough or not clear enough. So I think what will be the most interesting for me is um, more technical, let's say, how the tools are built, how the offer and the product is built to make it as clear as possible what you get locally, what you get in the cloud, what you get if you self-host. So, for example, there could be value in support. Support is also something I tried in the past and it didn't work at all, support contracts. And I know that XWiki, for example, is having a lot of support contract. I think it's their main model, if I'm not mistaken. But I tried and it didn't really work. But maybe now I realize that it's probably a product, how the product is built and positioned. And so probably that will be the most interesting part for me, seeing what others are doing and try to copy, copy the working receipts.
Excellent. What do you think in the next year? What do you think is the way that you're going to leverage open source to grow?
Um, I,
Specifically.
yeah. I think, I mean, open source is still was since the beginning the core of Mokun. I mean, there is no question about this. Um, I mean, it will always be open source first. Also, I sometimes I post rant about that on LinkedIn, and I firmly believe that it's open source first,
Mhm.
and then at least for us, monetization comes second, and probably for the better and worse. But I mean, that's how I'm built. So even if the cloud fails ultimately, so for
Mhm.
now it's growing slowly. I mean, it's bringing money, so good signs, overall. Um, I would prefer, the open source project to continue
Mhm.
instead of seeing it, sold
Mhm.
here and there. And so I think it will be open source first, and then features that are, let's say, secondary or quality of life improvements that people will pay for. And but yeah, and then I think at least in my mind, I'm already back on the question: would you paywall some features, etc.? And I'm already thinking about no, wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
So yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. That's it for this podcast episode. I'm looking forward to seeing you in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, me too. It will
Um,
be great.
for those of you who are listening, check out Open Source Founder Summit if you haven't done so already.
Thank you very, very much, Emily.